Andy Fenton, how are you, my friend?
Good to you, mate. Happy Friday.
Happy Friday to you, and welcome everybody on today. Happy Friday. Welcome to Wealth, Wine and Wisdom. Another wonderful Friday it is, and a couple of weeks since we've been together as a bit of a crew. So fantastic to see everybody. I can see a bunch of people, 25 odd people, 30 people online now. Give us a shout out, gang. Where are you dialing in from? There's usually a few regulars and sometimes a few blow-ins. But give us a shout out in the comments. But as you guys are doing that, welcome to Wealth, Wine and Wisdom. Ladies and gentlemen, anyone who's joining for the first time, Andy Fenton, the extraordinaire when it comes to the finance world and the stock market, been in the banking and stock world for 20 years, and myself, Jason Witten, property investing 20 years plus, and we get together each Friday and have done for a while. First time on, Isaac, welcome, mate. Great to see you. Fantastic to have you. Good to see. We'll put you down there. That's a good spot for the comments, I think, which is great. Great to see you online. We've got Lucas coming in from Brisbane. We've got Jacinta coming in from Melbourne. So great to see you guys here. Best practice in Camden, Vanessa. Great to see you online as well. So, like I was saying, Andy and I have been getting together since the start of COVID, actually. This was a response, Wine and Wisdom, it started with, now Wealth, Wine and Wisdom, to serve our communities, our property and business communities, in supporting them through COVID. We've had a good time. We're not quite sure anyone else has had a good time, but we've had a good time. Providing as much value as we can in our respective fields to those who need this information. So we love hanging out with you guys on Friday. Welcome all of you guys. We've got Mark in from Maitland and a bunch more on. So today we're going to catch up. We haven't been together for a couple of weeks, Andy. What's going on in the world of the stock market, my friend? Plenty going down or up or sideways?
Mate, well, it's all up at the moment. It's just varying degrees up, mate. It's been a pretty incredible little track, actually. It really has. So we've got a lot to chat about today. Whack some questions in if you've got anything that is market-related, stimulus-related, government-related. Let's not go Trump-related. I think we've killed Trump as much as we possibly can, but always happy to have another bit of a stab at it. And oh, look, he's coming for a bit of a cameo. Always he's somebody that can't be missed, can he? But mate, the markets have been really buoyant. I say that today we closed lower here, but mate, there's some cool stories. One stock that everybody knows, right? And so when I say Uber, what's the next stock that comes to mind?
Tesla, Uber, Tesla, Airbnb. Airbnb. Boom.
It's, for those of you who don't know, Airbnb actually just listed just literally on the 10th. So what do you reckon in the middle of COVID-19 where well, in America's just basically going back into lockdown in different states for Christmas. Airbnb, thrives off the American community, thrives off the European community, also pretty close to sort of lockdown. The UK, pretty close to lockdown or in lockdown. Australia were coming out, or at least the Victorians are coming out, but pretty subdued environment for a company like Airbnb or any type of hospitality, really. So what would you expect a stock like that to do on listing? One would think it's the worst possible time for a stock like that to list. What do you reckon the expectations are there, Jess?
Well, yeah, I would have thought in the middle of COVID, it would be a disaster to list now. Airbnb, I do know, Airbnb is a bit of a favoured cash flow strategy in the world of real estate investors. A lot of real estate investors who are quite capable of getting their hands dirty or interested in getting their hands dirty, do a little bit of Airbnb maximizing their income. I would have thought it would have been a problem in the middle of COVID. Disaster, I would call. I bet I'm wrong, though.
Let me let me share this. Well, one would think rationally, right? One would think yes. But one thing I think that COVID has done, and we're going to talk a little bit about stimulus later on and how the effects of that on markets and the enormity of it. But mate, this is if you just flip screen here, and you'll probably be able to see that there. So that's what Airbnb did on the opening trade, right? So effectively, and I'll see if I can really zoom in on this section of it.
Yeah.
Right. So started off at around about $62, $63. That was just around about 9 o'clock in the morning, and then shot up. I think it hit around about 170. So basically, Airbnb doubled, and reached. So the shares closed on Thursday at 144, which is up 113%. So that's on the initial public offering, right? So that is $100 billion company now.
Say that again. So 113% up in one day. No, is that what you just said?
113%. 113%. Now remember, we spoke about this some time ago, and we sort of said, look, we don't know when, but this is going to be a big time for mergers and acquisitions, and it's going to be a big time for listing stocks where people can see some return. And what this tells you is, well, it could come off over the next couple of days, could very well. But mate, coming off 118 or whatever it was percent profit over the course of the day just shows you the kind of resilience that investors have and how far looking they are. Right, so part of it might be vaccines, part of it might be that, part of it might be low interest rates, may well be, but Airbnb smashed it out of the park. And mate, this is a pretty common thing. If we jump, whoops, sorry, wrong one. If we jump across to the next good old slide here, you don't need to see the numbers here, just the graphic depiction. On the left-hand side, we've got the ASX 200, right? So this is 12-month to date, right? So this is how to this very day, and we're sharing this because next week is our Christmas wine and wisdom. But the S&P 200, which is the Australian index, on the left-hand side, the S&P 500, which is the American index, very, very different beasts. But look, the trend is pretty similar, right? Trend is pretty similar. And so American markets kick the lights out, and we're going to go into a little bit about that. But I want to break before we go in there and just share something that that I think everyone will find very, very interesting. And I don't know whether people have seen this before, but let's just check this out. Let's see how much detail we can get here with the old shared screen, if we can get that up, mate. I've got down there the, go to full screen mode here. We've got the US debt clock. So you can jump on, you can have a look at this, usdebtclock.org.
What's going on there, Andy? What's going on right now there? That's just looks insane.
It kind of looks like a casino, doesn't it? It's kind of like ching, 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 ching.
It does look mad, yes.
But mostly in the red, unfortunately. But let me run you through some of the numbers if you can't see them well at home. Up at the very top left, up here, we've got the US national debt sitting at a whopping $27 trillion. That's 27 with a P for trillion.
Say that again. Wow.
So that's the debt. And let's just count for the millions. So, all right, it is about to go up.
This looks like a gambling website, Andy. Like it looks like I've stumbled upon some sort of gambling website late at night. Unbelievable.
You mightn't. So here's the thing. How many people have we got on so far? Because I've got a bit of competition that I reckon we should run. Get a little bit of fun out there.
We've got about 30 on right now.
For those of you who are listening, get your pens out, get your pens ready. I'm going to drop a challenge to you because we're going to show you a couple of the figures now. All right. And geez, I shouldn't have given you the website because you could cheat now, but now I've just given you the clue.
Yeah, show yourself at the foot, Andy.
Yep. So what we're going to do is we're going to run a best guess, right? So we're going to try and see who can get closest to the mark, but we're not going to use national debt. And so I'm not going to take you to where on the chart this is, but so we've got the US national debt sitting at whopping 27 trillion, and this is going to provide some context to the stuff that we're going to go into later. But one of the things that I really want to talk about, which is another part that is on here, is the big unfunded side of the equation, right? So the unfunded is, when you think of unfunded liabilities, what are they? Well, they're pensions, age pensions, right? They are, well, there we go. They're pensions, age pensions.
What's going on here?
Oh, geez, you've multiplied. So this is exactly what's happening over in the States, is that the amount of people that they have to provide pensions for is actually expanding rapidly. So just as a bit of a ballpark, and write in the chat box if you know how many, and I'll tell you what it is. It's in the trillion, Mark. Whack it in the chat box right now, or whack it in the messages just down below. What do you think the best guess is right now for what unfunded liabilities for the US is currently sitting at? And so unfunded is all of those future pensions, those future payments, Medicares, all of these sorts of things that they have to store money to pay out. So just whack that in the chat box, and we'll see what comes up here, mate, because it's a staggering figure.
So the question is, the government has underwritten all of these liabilities into the future. What is the value of those liabilities? And it's mostly built up of what? Future debts to other countries, or debts to their citizens?
Debts to their citizens, debts to paying back bonds that they need to pay back to other businesses, countries, so on and so forth.
Yeah.
As a business owner, the way that I put it is all business owners have, well, not so much unfunded liabilities, but current liabilities. So it's the team's superannuation, right? So over the course of a quarter, the team's superannuation liability increases, then we pay it out. Yes. So we now have, Jacinta, 28 trillion. Do we have any other?
38 trillion Jacinta's chucked out there. I'm gonna say 400 trillion. I'm gonna chuck a big number out there.
$400 trillion.
$400 trillion. Isaac reckons 51 trillion. He's gonna go the 51s.
51, all right. We're in around there. The 51 trillion. These are unfathomable numbers, right? So yeah, I always have to look back to try and figure out how many zeros there are in there, and that's so from a trillion, it's 3, 6, 9, 12 zeros that back up the trillion. Wouldn't you like that on the back of a check? So the government are going to have to sign that check at some point in time. And so, as I said, it's like as a company, we build up our employees' entitlements, and then we have to pay them off. And then at the end of the quarter, they go down. Now, the government have a very similar system, but some of these are over a quarter, some of them are over a year, some of them are over 10 years, and the 10-year government bond, so on and so forth. So have we got any more bidders in regards to the how many?
No more bidders yet, Andy. But I remember, and I might have said this yonks ago about, trying to put this kind of trillion idea into visual perspective. So, we've got the idea of Jacinta saying too many zeros. The idea that $1 million, if you put it with $1 notes, and American $1 notes, $1 bills, it would go, I think it was like 12 meters. Okay, so they're stacked up end to end. $1 billion was like 2 football fields long, or something like that. It was exponentially a lot more. And then $1 trillion was 57 kilometers, of dollar bills stacked up. So the increments in a million to a billion to a trillion, they're not sort of equal or linear. It's not a linear increment. It's insane increments. As we go. Yeah, a gazillion, says Jeff.
$1
gazillion dollars.
We're getting there, Jeff. Not too far off a gazillion dollars. Well, we're almost a tenth of the way there. So, mate, the number is, and here's the competition for the rest of the night. So the number currently is, right, so get your pens out, write this one down. And I'm just going to do it like sequentially, right? So I'm not going to, because it's too hard to go any other way.
Let me go.
I can't hear it, but it must be going like this.
Bang. Well, okay, go, Andy.
So here's where it is. So get your pens out. Ready? It is 155 992 064 857 000.
What was that? What number?
Let's just do this one more time, and we'll only go up to $1 million, right? So this is the number: 155 992 069 000 000.
Was that 155 trillion? Was that?
That is 155 trillion 992 million and $73 million with the numbers ticking up.
So that is their future. That's their future liability in that economy. You know,
and every second it's ticking on, and every time they don't pay one of those, and they get a bond or they create more debt, it goes onto the bottom line. So every time they don't pay it, it goes back onto the bottom.
So I mean, there's
the Madoff the Bernie Madoff Ponzi scheme, right? So funds paid off.
Yeah, well, I mean, there's a conversation about this, isn't there? Like, let's just kick the can down the road a bit, right? And it sounds like this thing's been kicking the can down the road for a long time. I was watching. I was checking out. Actually, I should have grabbed it. It'd be great for Wine and Wisdom. An interview with Rich Dad Poor Dad,
Robert
Kiyosaki, and basically he said, well, there's nothing wrong with debt. He said because debt is the only tax-free money, right? So borrow as much as you can. So he had this really interesting version of the world. He said, well, if debt's low, if debt is cheap, well, get on with it, right? So grab as much money as you can.
They must have read the book. The politicians, they must have read Robert's book. They know where we're going.
Yeah. Well, I mean, at the end of the day, infamous, not necessarily people we want to emulate, but, the Bondis of the world, famously said, if you owe $10,000 and you can't pay it, you're in trouble. But if you owe $10 million and you can't pay it, they're in trouble, right? And this is the thing. This played out, right? This played out absolutely in a classic way in the GFC. You coined this phrase. I think you should trademark it. Too big to fail, right? The bank, which businesses are too big to fail? In America, with the debt crisis, and also Australia, even Australia had to underwrite its own banking system, right? The government said, all right, we'll underwrite you. They were too big to let fail, right? So, all right, borrow your ass off. This is kind of like entrepreneurship 101. When you're in the low zone of lending, borrow, because, unless you've got 10 or 15 or 20 million borrowed, you're going to be in the danger zone. It's kind of like, and so it's an interesting one, isn't it? It's an interesting one.
Well, it's funny you should say that because so let's lay down the challenge. Let's lay down the gauntlet. We hit the
What's
number
the challenge here,
on.
Andy? Come on, but make it clear.
So, to the nearest $1 million, what will be the US unfunded liabilities by the time we finish Wine and Wisdom? And we're going to snap our fingers towards the end. And we'll give something cool away to the
So it started at 155 million, and within the next 30 minutes, what do you guys believe? Chuck it in the chat so we know which to go back to. 155 by the time we finish. What do you guys? 155 trillion. What do you guys reckon it will get to? Jeff asked a good question.
I'll give you the number, which is 155 trillion 992 billion and 67 million.
All right.
That's
hopefully
number.
everyone's got that.
What are we going to get to? And you've got to be within 100 million to get the prize.
Get the prize.
So
well,
let's see where that goes.
Let's see where it goes. Jeff asked if I could lend him 10 million. Not today, Jeff, but maybe a bit later on next week. Give me a call. But it is interesting, and I'll tell a quick story about that, Jeff. In the GFC, for me, it was 2009, 2010, or just prior to the GFC, 2008. I remember walking in to a lender in 2008, and I wanted to buy a a block of units. There were 76 three-bedroom units, all on one title, and it was mortgagee in possession. And I walked into the lender who had that property as mortgagee in possession, and I said, "Hey, listen, I want to buy that property, I'm a property investor." And they said, "Oh, well, have you got any funding?" And I said, "Well, I hear you guys are lenders as well. Can you lend me some money?" I'll squish the story down. Jeff, this is for you. They lent me the purchase price, which was $9.2 million. They lent it to me. They also lent me the stamp duty, the first year's interest in advance, and guess how many pieces of paper, Andy and Jeff, that I had to fill out? What was my loan application? How long? How many hundreds of pages was my loan application? What do you think?
Well, by today's standards, you get even just one bank account with it, it's going to be about 97 pages long.
It was one, and I'm not kidding you, one email and 1 page long. I borrowed $11 million. And this was
in the words of the great Eddie Murphy, "Get the fuck out of here."
It was there. And it was madness. It was the credit madness. And, consequently, the wheels came off that world, the high credit world. And, the idea that borrowing, this is an interesting one. This is something, Andy, and I've seen it a million times. It's easier to borrow $100 million than it is to borrow $1 million. Okay, I've seen that said so many times. And I think I said this the other week in a coffee chat that I have, and maybe even Wine and Wisdom. I sat in a Zoom meeting the other day with a funds management company that manages $580 billion worth of funds across the world. And they were saying to me and another chap who brought me in on this conversation, "Hey, listen, we've got so much money, we don't know what to do with it. Have you got any deals? Have you got anything that makes any sense, even half a moment sense, so we can put some money to work? Because there is so much lazy money sitting in our current account. It's insane, and our investors are going to take that money off us if we don't put it into deals." And right now, and this is for you, Jeff, mate, if you've got even a half-baked decent idea, start shopping it around, because $10 million will come out of the woodwork in an instant. It's crazy. Yeah. These guys said to me and the other guy, "Can you guys take $100 million and put it to work?" $100 million. I said, "Yeah, mate, no problem. Hook me up." It was my solicitor. We were actually looking at a short-term lending solution for people who were selling their properties. But it's crazy. It's interesting. I think it's a fascinating. Just like, what's their number? What's their number?
Well, it's funny you mentioned that 1-800. dot.
No, I love it, Jeff. Mate, it's good. So it's really interesting, and this is an actual serious part. We're having a good laugh about it, but it is actually quite serious. Andy, you were part of raising, hundreds of millions of dollars in those crazy times as well. Where good ideas attract money, and right now, government bonds are the lowest value they've ever been in, I think, history. Ever been in history, so they're worthless. Money in a bank account, worthless. Like, absolute rubbish. Guys, there is more money in circulation than in the world's history. And it's looking for something to do. If any of you guys are sitting there and got a little bit of entrepreneurial flair in the tank, and you got an idea or two and you know how to do a deal, money will come if you go rattle a few trees. And
And some of you might remember the times where Barack Obama, where we actually had somebody with varying degrees of pragmatism and sanity in power, whether you like him or not. He was pragmatic and maybe a little bit too conservative. But anyway, he was a legend. He could shoot a basketball. He didn't dance like a twat. So many of you may remember this. There was a thing called the debt ceiling.
Yes.
Right. That was the maximum amount of debt that the American economy could have, in the opinion of Parliament and the Federal Reserve at that point in time. And it could not go any higher because mathematically it didn't work out. So Obama was given the ultimatum that you either fire 600 million public servants, which wasn't politicians, by the way, right? No, they're not the first ones.
6 million or not 600 million? 6 million?
600 million.
Sorry.
600,000. I beg your pardon. Sorry, we're talking about trillions before.
We're in the million.
They fired 10 times the population of America in order to be able to. So, sorry, let's 600,000 public servants. Thanks, Jason. Which are the fireys, which are the frontline defence, which were the police officers, right? So he was staring down the barrel of firing over 500,000 of the public servants who do great jobs over in America. Outside of the media, mostly we assume they do a great job. And they basically held him to ransom. They said, you either fire these people or we're not going to hit the debt ceiling. We have to raise it. So eventually said, bugger it, I don't care. We're raising the debt ceiling. And since then, it's only ever gone up. So the question I'm going to ask here, two questions. Whack them in the chat box. What do you reckon is the total amount of stimulus that they put in the first half? So the first response to COVID globally, what do you reckon the number is? All of the governments combined.
Globally.
What do you reckon?
Talking globally. All right. Yeah.
Whack that in the chat box. What do you reckon? In Western countries, stimulus. Now, the second question is going to be, and just conceptualize this, do you reckon it was bigger or do you reckon it was smaller than the stimulus that happened in global financial crisis? And if it was bigger or smaller, by what factor do you think it was bigger or smaller?
Andy, that's a complicated bunch of questions. Let's just say, was it bigger than the GFC or smaller? Where are you? Let's put you in a solo right there.
Let me give you the numbers, and these are by McKinsey and Company, which for incredible work. Thank you, team there. They're not my team, but they're incredible stats, publicly available. So June 11, 2020, governments allocated 10 trillion. That's trillion with a T. 10 trillion for economic stimulus in 2 months.
In COVID.
2 months. In 2 months due to COVID. So the little black dot there is representative, is the scaled size of the stimulus of the GFC as opposed to the scale size of the stimulus of COVID. So let me say that more succinctly. The little black dot is how much they put into the system, the government's put into the system in the GFC, and the blue dot is how much they put in during the middle of COVID. So we've got from top.
Where's Australia?
Germany, top left.
Where's Australia? We're not even in there.
Mate, our numbers aren't big enough. We don't even factor in on these. So the Germany, 3.5 to 33 times GDP. 33 times GDP.
So let's think about that, Andy. Like, so, right now, and I've got a few little things here I might even sort of grab. I'll see if I can track them down. But right now, like, so many people are like sitting on more cash than they've ever had in probably their lives. I know many business owners from JobKeeper and other stimulations, many individuals, grabbed 10 or 20 grand out of super, got JobKeeper, squirreled it away. The savings rate in Australia right now, let's say, there's more cash like squirreled away than ever before. That money flowing out, like I'm an eternal optimist, and what I'm eternally optimistic about is people's, it sounds negative, but in a positive way, inability to keep that money in their bank account or in their pockets. It will flow out into consumption or something else in this next 12 months, 24 months, 36 months. What do you think about that? Because I think it'll flow, and I think things will fucking blow up, as in a good way.
Well, there's a psychology of money, which most people will say, yeah, Andy, that's all well and good, you're full of it. But here's the reality of it. I've seen it personally. I've seen it with all y'all. I know that it's a fact. Right? Yes. So you can argue with me until you're blue in the face. I just know that it's a truism.
Well, you and I see the truth, right? This is the truth. Like, they say the most lied about thing is the size of, things in a locker room, but it's not. The most lied about thing is on the planet is money, right? We either lie consciously or unconsciously to ourselves, we round down.
And in the locker room.
Yeah. Well, that's, but we'll move on from that one anyway. But,
So from a psychology perspective, what I know to be true is there is a number that's unique to all of us. Yes. And that is the number that we see in a bank account that is one of two sides, right? And if we have a continuum from a little bit scary to quite nice, right? There is a number between a little bit scary and too nice that we sit in the bounds of. And when our savings accounts hit above or below those marks, we either get scared or we either figure out unique and inventive ways to get rid of it. Now, some people who are pragmatic and get into investing and get into property or whatever it is, start to go, how can I utilize that to get it out of my visual sight and into something productive?
Somewhere else.
And then when it gets below the mark, then we hustle like mofos in order to bring it back up.
Yeah.
And what I know is that range, that continuum is different for everybody, but we all have it. And the moment that we're out of whack, so if we've got more savings now because we've been at home and let's say we have been paid over COVID, if we've got more in the account, we will either spend it or we will invest it. But either which way, it's going to go.
It's going to go. So have a look at that, Andy. You can see this line since 2000 and let's say 11. This kind of this line here, sort of a 10% line, has been there for a while. And the same size, if you have a look at the thing sort of saying the principal, but 2020, check it out, massive increase in offset in home loans. Now, as soon as the confidence comes back, we'll be back in there and, as a bunch of people, we're going to be taking that money and putting it to work. And I think that's sensible. Like you and I talk about this all the time. The waste, the lack of, the inefficiency of money sitting in bank accounts, is often that kind of that little dripping tap that wears down your financial capacity for your future, right? You have to put it to work at some point. It can't be just sitting there ineffectively.
And let's look at the GFC. The GFC in some ways primed us for this, right? The GFC taught us if you're overexposed and you're over-leveraged, then squirrel some away. So when COVID hit, people have started squirreling away better than what they did in the GFC. But it will be deployed. And psychologically, it will be deployed because we just can't keep it in the kitty too long. We either invest it or we spend it. Mate, I've seen it so many times, I just know it to be true.
Well, it's human psyche. So
100%. It's human behavior, it's human psyche. And those of us who learn to make work for us, great. There's those people who can't have any and they need debt. They need to see debt because they're just risk on. They're the base jumpers of investing and the base jumpers of business, right? They're just always leveraged the max. Right? And if they started that journey in the midst of COVID, then, they would be 300-400% up. But
well, it's interesting. It's interesting you talk about that, Andy, because whether we liked it or not as property investors, after the GFC, the Australian lending system, actually, like our banking system was one of the safest in the world, even at GFC times. And then, and you're saying, well, fuck, Jesus,
We got downgraded here in Victoria from Dan the Man. Now we're AA from AAA, AA minus from
AA minus, far out. That's a bit of an impact too, So, through the GFC, our percentage of, high risk lending was actually really low. It was actually 1% compared to America, which was like 11% of their lending, which was these ninja loans. No income, no job, no worries.
We'll give it sign here.
Sign here. It was mad, right? So
$1 million.
Yeah, no problem. We don't care. We'll kick that can down the road. If you guys haven't watched The Big Short, listen, everyone listening in tonight for your homework. If you are seriously want to understand what happened in the GFC, go watch the movie The Big Short. It is terrifying and awing at the same time. It's like, whoa, crazy stuff. Gobsmacking. But, really at the end of the day, the idea that, the Australian banking system was actually quite well positioned. Whether it was by design or by default, who knows? But, it
was 100% by design. It was Peter Costello brought in the 4 Pillars policy about 20 years ago.
Yeah,
and it was by design to keep it safe, and that's one of the reasons that we've had the best AAA rating around the world. And as I said, this isn't a Liberal or Labor thing. This is just a policy thing. But it's the reason why we've had the most stable banking system in the world, which is based on our capital adequacies. But here's the thing: it got completely fucked through what happened with COVID, and I'm not going to be contentious about it. But
well, mate, I think APRA started it. APRA went too far. That APRA investigation went way too far. They were out of control in where they ended up, and then COVID
That was payment that was trying to protect investors. That wasn't trying to protect sovereignty, and it wasn't trying to protect the banking system of Australia.
Dead right.
That was trying to protect investors, and we do have in politics these days. We do have in Australia a little bit too much protect people. Put on a helmet when you climb up a ladder.
Yeah, it makes sense. Your head's pretty important. Put a helmet on, but if you need me to force you to, then mate, well, that's Darwinism, mate. I saw a great Facebook meme. Like it said, take all the warning signs off everything, and just let natural selection sort it out, right? Like at the end of the day, by and large, from a financial point of view, like I tend to be on the other side of people need to sort of wake up and not be nannied. They have to take responsibility for their lives. And what I love about, our communities, the communities you and I live in, our communities, our tribes of people, take that stuff seriously. They don't want to be a burden on society when they're older. They don't want to be a victim. They want to be empowered and take responsibility for their lives. And I love that. I love I'm part of that, for whatever we do, Andy. We're good to roll with that sort of stuff. But, Australia's banking system is designed to be safe. And by and large, other than, just now in COVID, it has been quite safe. It's been an interesting ride in that sort of space. I think there's going to be a credit boom next year. When there's a really big decline, there's always a swing to the opposite into the future. I think there's going to be a credit boom.
You can almost put your money on it, can't you? Like it almost.
Well, you can.
Happens.
You can, Andy. You can in the share market, can't you?
Right. Okay.
That's not advice, by the way, ladies and gentlemen. This is not advice.
But when you jump into that, here's the funny thing about it, and this is what we all need to be considering, is that when we looked at those little dots before, right, and it may not show up on the screen, but just for 2 seconds, those are a big difference.
Oh, where did it go? Where did it go? There it is.
It's a big difference, right? So it's a big difference. So I'll get it a little bit bigger.
Yeah, dot yourself and zoom in, mate. Zoom in if you can. I don't know if you can, but yeah, there you go. Perfect. That's
great.
That's
the GFC stimulus in proportion to the COVID stimulus.
Wow.
Now, if you look at what happened in markets, and so here's something that we need to consider, right? So we need to consider that there are multiple variables, but if we just remove all of the other variables and we just go money in circulation and people in population in Western worlds, right here.
Money in circulation, people and population. Yep. Yep.
So if we just take that in, now the GFC happened 10 years ago, give or take, right?
Yeah.
So the amount of money that was stimulated this is the first 2 months. So this is not considering the rest of the stimulus that has happened.
Oh, really? Only 2 months? Shit.
First 2 months, right? Proportionately. So when you look, it's unfathomable, right?
That's a lot of dough, Andy. That's a lot of dough.
Germany almost 10 times. Japan almost 20 times.
What's the population of Germany? 100 million? What's the population of Germany?
Anybody put it in the chat box. You will get 0 award, but you'll look like a super.
What's the population of Germany? Somebody search it up as we're chatting. But yeah, listen,
that's percentage of GDP, right? So that's the increase of proportionate, right? So it's going. If the GC were today, it would have been 3.5 times, but we didn't. We did 33.0 times, or 33% GDP. So what that does, though, the effect of that means that is how much more money is now in circulation than previously. And so coming out of the GFC, they did that because we're in a credit crunch, right? So they injected a huge amount of money. And what ended up happening was markets went. Now, what we've seen is markets go, right? But we've seen markets go.
How does it go, Andy? It's
in very, very interesting ways, right? And it's the matter of money going out of our pockets. And
83 million people in Germany. 83 million people. There you go.
83 million people in Germany. So it was 33 times their GDP, if I got those statistics right. Go to McKinsey.com just to double check that. Thank you, Alison. And Jeff, straight on money afterwards.
Boom.
Well, Jeff.
Yep. Boom.
On the button.
Was on. Jeff
being a good Englishman who knows exactly how many people are in Germany. And that's what you need to know when you're in England, right? So here's and I'm just going to take you through these slides super quick. Right. Nice. So we've got on the left-hand side, we've got the ASX 200. This is where we left at the beginning. Right. So ASX 200 over the last year, we're still not in positive territory, based on where we got to just before COVID hit. On the right-hand side, we've got the S&P 500. We are absolutely 100% in positive territory in the American market, the S&P, the top 500. Is
that right? Wow.
But let's break it down a little bit.
Yeah,
this is where it starts to become interesting. Money will flow into sectors, right? And stimulus will flow into different parts of the market. And Germany is the size of Victoria, Trevor, 100%. I don't know if that's true. We might just be taunting just random, completely inaccurate facts.
Well,
but
no, they are. The physical size, they're pretty small. Yeah, a lot of people in an interesting place, you know.
No, I have no idea.
Well, it's an interesting side note for 30 seconds in that sort of space, which is, you know, what's the percentage? Ladies and gentlemen, quick one while Andy's just making a point here. Quick side note. What is the percentage of the population of Victoria live in Melbourne? All right, percentage of the population of Victoria that live in Melbourne. Go. All right, go, Andy.
Time is ticking.
Get your time is ticking. You got 45 seconds. No Google searching.
So if we have a look at here, and I'll bring it up a little bit. So this is the same index, but we separate the index via different parts. So we go, okay, all of the stocks that are in the top 500, which ones are technology? Over the last 12 months, no surprise based on everything that we've been talking about right from the beginning, 43%, whopping 43%.
Wow.
When we go to value stocks, right? And value stocks are what we consider stocks that are undervalued based off their forward earning income. Now, growth stocks or tech stocks.
So you're talking about a yield. You and I talk about this often. Like, so based on the yield, the return, the dividend. Yep.
All right, your answers need to be in by now.
All right, here we go. Boom, boom. Jeff, you nailed it. Trevor and Jacinta, you guys were pretty bullish about Victoria, which was in the 80s. But Jeff, boom, look at you go. There you go. 75% of the state population of Victoria lives in Melbourne. Jeff, good Googling, mate. Good Googling. All right. Interesting.
It's heavy on the punch.
So well done, Jeff. Well done, Jeff. There's clapping.
So these are the value stocks. So let me take you into some of the value stocks. The value stocks is just positive, but let me take you through typical sectors.
Just let, for everyone listening in, value stock means growth, or does value stock mean return? Like
value stock is. Let me go back. Value stock. A stock is considered to be a value stock where the forward earnings of the company are underpriced. So the forward earnings of the company are underpriced based on where the stock value is right now. So if you have, so typically they have a.
Jeff nailed that, by the way. He didn't Google it. He nailed it off the top of his head. Good work. So the forward booked income, income. Got
so
you.
think of it of a property. So a tech company would be a property that pays almost bugger all income, but everybody wants it, right? Those really high value areas right next to the sea, but you rent it out. Nobody's willing to pay the kind of money that you need to earn in order to earn a good income from it. But people will buy that property to have it so they can look over the harbour every single day. But you rent that sucker out, you might get 3%.
So that's not
what we call a growth stock.
That's a growth stock, not a value. Because this is interesting, came out just recently, Andy. The Perpetual Boss says, hey, the return of value investing is on the radar.
And look, this is a theme. This is a theme, and again, not giving advice, but this is one that I think everyone needs to be aware of. Because when we start to look at value, what kind of you have to ask yourself the question: what sort of companies are value stocks? And if we just have a quick summary here, and I did that before, so that was the technology sector up 50-odd%. But what kind of companies can you almost set your watch by the income? Well, energy is one.
Energy stocks, right? Yeah. Energy. Yeah. Well, I mean, I would have said banking stocks. In the past, but yeah.
Well, you would be right. So when we look at financials, right, we're down 4.97%. So that's the Wells Fargo's of the world. One of the reasons that this is up so significantly is through Goldman Sachs, Citigroup, right? That they have pushed this high. They have been the one that bucked the trend over in the US and probably pushed this higher than what it is now. But the financial significantly lower, and there's going to be some ones that they're going to bomb in this area, but an area to watch. Wells Fargo Group still, it's getting better and it's performing better, but it's one of the big companies over there and great forward books, and also have risk attached to them. So it's not just jump into Wells Fargo. I'm not saying that, but also the energy side. And energy is made up of not just utility companies, but also the petrol industry and so on and so forth. And with less flights going around, then these things are going to get hammered. But as the world returns to COVID normal, as we've started to call it in Victoria, right, as it goes to COVID normal, and that's what the Victorians call it, because we were probably the other ones that were really massively affected as far as lockdowns are concerned in Victoria. So we were the ones who stopped traveling. The rest of you just stopped traveling because Victoria stopped traveling.
Well, the Victorians broke records. You guys are.
We're pretty.
You guys are competitive. You guys are competitive.
It's right for you to follow what we do, okay? Whether that's the right thing for your states and stuff like that, well, that's okay. But we understand that you want to be us and you mimic us. But what that did is it decreased the amount of planes in transit. It decreased the amount of fuel that was being consumed. I didn't use my car for 6 months.
Mate,
I'd bought a new car just before COVID. It's now a year and a half old. It has less than 12,000 Ks, where normally it'd have about 20 or 30 by now.
Mate, only driven on Sundays to church and back, like it's...
That's right. Sometimes I miss every Sunday.
Yeah.
But that's right. But so here's the thing: is that growth stocks and the tech stocks are the story of where people have found some comfort because they see where that goes. When society gets back to normal, and here's what historically happens with value stocks: is they go not good, and that was that as an example. But these are forward cash flow stocks, and so my whole point being from this is that there's more money in circulation now than ever. And if you go back to the GFC and the stimulus from the GFC, an average of 10 times the amount of money has dropped comparatively to GDP, right? So it's a comparable figure. How much did the country produce going into the global financial crisis? How much did they produce going into COVID? The government stimulated almost 10 times the amount on average across it. $10 trillion. That's $10 trillion that is not going into government bonds because they're paying 1% or below 1%. It's not going into term deposits. So it's paying down debt and it's going into consumer behavior. And eventually consumer behavior goes into petrol, driving, shopping centers, all of these things that have been smashed. And yes, some of them will change. Some will change. Right, so the behaviors will change a little bit. More people buy on Amazon.
I think a small percentage, man. Like,
And it goes back to old mate that we chatted about from and I've forgotten his name just off the moment, but he's literally one of the world's largest investors. He said the belief that a pandemic will change social structure for the first time in 2,000 years, and this time is different, is arrogance, stupidity, or just short-sightedness.
Isn't he the head of the Magellan Fund? Is it Magellan Fund? No,
it wasn't him.
No, it wasn't him.
I'd never quote him.
We're not quoting. Anyway, we could. That was not Andy, but Jason, who's not licensed.
but I mean that was an aggressive stance. He said that on Bloomberg, by the way, and but it's right. And all you have to do, mate, I remember being on the phone to you at one point in time. It's like we would just let it out. It's the second weekend we were out. I wanted my car cleaned and I had to go and get something from Southland. Yes. And I was on the phone to you and I said, listen, just let me call you back because I got to park the car and get it cleaned. And I went to go and park the car. He said, it's a 4-hour wait. And I thought, fuck this. So I called you straight back. I'm done. I'm not going to the shopping center. It's crazy out here. We chatted for 40 minutes before I got out of the car park. Now,
it's crazy.
If that means all business is going to Amazon, it's not the way of things. So as investors, we do need to be cognizant of the fact that vaccines will come and pandemics will come and go. Whether this one stays, nobody knows, right? Or to what level it'll stay, nobody knows. The one thing that is constant is our behavior as a herd, right? Our most fundamental behavior. And Maslow's hierarchy of needs starts off with safety, right? The very next is social order, which is now that I've got my needs met and I'm able to eat, then I want to have a glass of wine with Jason, right? Because I need some sort of social relevance. I need some sort of cohesiveness in my life. And that is the second level of our psychology, right? So these are fundamentally linked to us through thousands of years of evolution.
Yeah.
So when we talk about value stocks, I'm not just talking about, forward-looking earnings. I'm actually talking about social order, social construction, consumerism, buyer behavior, psychology of people to need to meet up in a shopping center to have a coffee together so they can look at what they're wearing and say, that looks terrible. I would look better in that. You would look better in that. Let's go and buy that from just down the road where we can try it on and see how good we look in it. Oh, it won't look that good. Maybe we'll just buy the other one.
Right.
And that sort of behavior is going to come back in. It already is.
Yeah.
And so that buyer behavior will translate into stocks. It will translate into property, and it will go across all of those dimensions. So there will be a transition from different market sectors over the next year, 2 years, 3 years. That's something that we know will happen.
Yeah, we know that's going to happen, and as we bring it sort of into a landing, this Wealth, Wine and Wisdom, there's a bunch of stuff I want to sort of chuck over the fence. Maybe we'll talk about next week, which is whoop whoop. There we go. But the idea that we have something like, hey, the housing crash that never happened. There was, I talked about this for, literally months and months, just saying, hey, listen, stop listening to these bloody turkeys out there that are, talking about rubbish that, at this point in time, there's no evidence. There's no fundamental evidence that is showing that this is going to happen. This is in Sydney, $475,000 above the reserve. Above the reserve, this property went for. And, that's happening, in a lot of places and spaces right now. It's happening in Sydney. It's happening in Brisbane. It's happening in Perth. It's happening in Adelaide and Tasmania, like Hobart, and, Melbourne, while being locked down for, quite a long time, has been affected in that way, but not necessarily, not necessarily disabled, but certainly, delayed in the response in this sort of space. But that market is certainly coming quickly, and as we go.
This is something that we need to take stock of what happened in Japan. Like I always say that history doesn't repeat itself, but it's an extraordinary mimic. And so we should be looking to Japan, because Japan is one of the few places that have come out the other side of zero interest. Well, let me rephrase that. Have not come out the other side of zero interest rates, but they have existed there in a global economy and held their pace for almost 20 years. Where are we? Like 15 years longer. And so we need to be able to understand that, maybe rates go back up. Maybe they don't. What happens in the midst of that? And here's the big question, right? If rates don't go up ever in a major way, if this is a new normal, this might be the boat that you miss. If rates go up, this might be the boat that you don't want to be on. But all you can do is look to other parts of the world to go, well, when has it happened before? And it hasn't happened before. And as a result of that, and then look, there's layers upon layers that we would start to go into.
Well, it's an interesting one, isn't it, Andy? Because, we talk about the access to capital and, over, the thousands of years, like, money or having access to money was kind of this special thing, right? And there was this hurdle, there was this barrier, right? But now, I mean, I can't remember the book, but I have read the book about how the actual stock market was started by a crazy Frenchman going, hey, there's a lot of these companies, in Europe that have got more credits. They called it the use of credits, money, cash, gold. And how can we kind of put them to use? Because they're sitting there useless. And the stock market was formed. And it was actually, the stock market was poo-pooed by this Frenchman and all of the elite, the gentry, as a crazy idea. And now it runs the fucking world. It's fucking crazy. So here's my, pontification, maybe a great way to end the world. There's a crazy Frenchman. Maybe Andy, we've reached the place where that hurdle to resources is not going to be a hurdle anymore, right? It's like it's almost like a fundamental right to access and capital for good ideas should not be, it should not be controlled by the elite anymore. Now it's accessible to everyone, right? You know, there's more credit, there's more, you know, resources available. Let's let that flow, you know, and just imagine just for a second, you know, those entrepreneurs who should have got funded, you know, 50 years ago for the rotary engine, which was 10 times better than the petrol engine. The reason they didn't beat, you know, Ford, because of access to funding. You know what I mean? And, you know, just for a moment, think about now what the world would be in 20, 30, 40 years' time, where the access to capital to make good ideas exist wasn't the barrier anymore, right? And that's interesting to me. Like, I think, you know, that's an interesting one.
Well, Silicon Valley was really the first start of that, really, wasn't it? In that people dump a huge amount of money with the expectation of either incredulous returns or none.
Yeah.
And a lot of money that goes into it is actually, it's not really philanthropic money, but it is money with deep purpose. It's sent in there, and it's not often to screw the world over. It's into deep purpose to connect the world, deep purpose to create green cars, deep purpose to be able to create the accommodation of kings for your average Joe. Airbnb, maybe I just figured out their purpose for them. But and now, as you said, I've never thought about it from that perspective. I think it's an interesting, and the problem is, Jason, all we can look at is Japan to get the data from, which makes me pretty much redundant because I'm a bit of a historian. I love to gather hardcore data on this. But one could assert that if you start to look forward on this, then 100%, like one of the great opportunities of extraordinarily low interest rates is the barrier to entry of an idea is extraordinarily low. Extraordinary. The cost to experiment with an idea, the cost to try an idea is very, very low. It's $1,000 or $2,000 a year for $100,000 deployed. And
maybe that's the secret to saving the planet, Andy Fenton, for us as humans. At the end of the day, the barrier to those good ideas that should have been funded, that should have got up, is being stripped away, you know. And, you know, I don't know, I'm a bit of a eternal optimist, you know, almost a romantic optimist, romantic capitalist optimist. I don't know, is that the right way to describe me? You know, I believe capitalism should win.
That's
you know,
movement.
Yeah,
isn't it? It is the conscious capitalist.
Powered by purpose. Profit and money created for purpose and betterment rather than, you know, take and destruction, you know. I think the millennials are coming hard at that one, and I love the idea of it, you know. So it's an interesting one. Andy, why don't we give that one...
Before we wrap up, Jace,
put a pin in it.
What's your number? What is your number?
Where did we get to? Gang? All right, well, we had... oh, crikey, where did we go here? I
can tell you the number we started with. It was 155 trillion, 992 billion, and 67 million. That's where it started.
All right. We had a couple of players here. We had Vanessa at 173 trillion. We had Jeff at 180 trillion. And we had Jacinta at 155 trillion. She had a little range there. Where did we get to, Andy? Who was the closest?
That's a crazy number, but I reckon Jacinta's got it, mate. Do you want to whack that one back up on the screen?
I'll whack that back up.
Oh, hang on. No, there's 3 zeros missed off the end of that. That looks like that's 155 billion, 992. Oh, no, that's 155 million, 992,000 odd dollars. So that's well short.
Well, you know, Jacinta, maybe we should give it to her because she missed a couple of zeros, but
let me give you point to point. So I've got point to point. So since we started this conversation, the unfunded liabilities of the US went from 155 trillion 992 billion 67 million dollars to 155 trillion 992 billion 838 million dollars. So it went up by a factor of around about $800 million.
800 million. I reckon Jacinta's got it. Well done, Jacinta.
So send us through some details. We'll figure out a nice way of being able to reward you. Maybe we can give you the personal finance blueprint and maybe some online programs or something like that that will shoot out just to say thank you for participating. And by the way, that's an incredible little present there. It's about two grand's worth of stuff. So we'll shoot that out to you. Just make sure you remind us, right? Hold us accountable.
Great, Jacinta. Hit us up with your email address or details, Jacinta, and we'll get you access to some excellent resources from myself and Andy. So great to have you guys on. So, hey, listen, everybody, thanks for dialing in this week to Wealth, Wine and Wisdom. Andy, as always, fantastic to connect with you at the end of the week. Have a glass of wine, have a bit of a chat, chew the fat about the world of finance and property. And, mate, awesome to connect with you and the rest of everyone on today. Thanks, Jacinta. We've got your email address. There's Sharon. Thanks, everybody. Hey, listen, you guys have a great weekend. Graham, thanks, mate.
The top ones there. Graham, there's Trevor, there's Jeff. Jeff's been all over it this week, and mate, greatly appreciated. Jacinta, Sharon, mate, it's wonderful to see all you guys jumping on board. So we will join you next week. And next week is the last Wine Wisdom in the Friday slot.
In the Friday slot. In the Friday series.
There may not be a little bit of Wine and Wisdom happening on impromptu from when Jason and I get to catch up as mates. We might choose to just buzz you in on one of our discussions, and hopefully that'll be fun if we do. But tomorrow is the last official Wine and Wisdom for 2020.
Next week, not tomorrow.
That's
next
great.
Week.
Yeah, I've got other things to do. Sorry, mate. It's a little bit too much wine. I'm almost finished the glass. But next week, last Wine and Wisdom, Wealth Wine and Wisdom for 2020 officially. So tune in. What we'd love to know is what is it that's about Christmas and about wealth that you'd like to understand, whether it's why do markets crash, why do markets zoom, why do people spend so much money over Christmas? Why don't people buy shit in the sales rather than in the stockings? What are your questions in and around Christmas? God, I can't even speak. So if you can shoot those through to us, we'd be super happy to try and answer some of those. And we're going to have a lot of fun next week because there is a real wrap up for the year. And looking forward to it. We'll drop a few bombs. Jason will throw a few hand grenades, as he always does, over the fence. This time I didn't get too many over my side, so I'm quite happy I didn't have to answer too many of them. But we'll love to see for the Christmas wrap-up, and hopefully we'll have a few little surprises for you along the way. So looking forward to it, Jason.
All right, great. Thanks, Alison. Thanks, Michelle. Thanks, Trevor. Good to see you back from WA, mate. Good to see you made it back. Three reds, Andy. I think Andy took the cake this week. A few weeks ago, I didn't eat lunch and I had a glass of wine and I slurred my words for the 50 minutes of Wine and Wisdom. Maybe, Andy, you've taken that one today. So appreciate everyone dialing in. Great to see you, brother. As always, fantastic to end the week with connecting with you. And thanks for joining, folks. Take care. Have a wonderful weekend and bye for now. All right. Adios.